Presenting In the Forest of the Night by Drac Von Stoller. Taking no credit for this story, all credit goes to the author. Let's begin. Deep in the forest stands a mountain known as Death Mountain that has claimed the lives of many daring mountain climbers and is one of the tallest mountains in the world, at an approximate height of 32,000 feet. The reason that so many climbers have lost their lives is because of health issues and freezing temperatures. You can always count on an avalanche to be waiting for the next brave souls to risk their lives climbing to the top of Death Mountain. Not only is the mountain covered with mountains of snow, but there is also no hint of sunlight to light the climbers' way as they climb the treacherous journey to the peak of the mountain. Of course, there is always some hotshot climbers that think they are the ones who will be the first to stand at the top of Death Mountain and yell out, "We made it!" and congratulate the rest of the brave climbers for such a heroic feat. Here's where the story begins. Jimmy Spencer and his friends Karen, Jackie and Tom were all avid mountain climbers and were always up for a challenge. They all dreamed of being heroes in their town. There wasn't much excitement in their village, so if Jimmy and his friends could climb the highest mountain and survive to tell about it, they would all be heroes. The farthest anyone climbed was halfway because of avalanches and extreme cold temperatures. It was too dangerous for helicopters or planes to fly above Death Mountain to search for lost climbers, so any search was by foot. Jimmy and his mountain climbing buddies used to extreme temperatures, so they all thought if anybody could tackle such a feat, they were the team of climbers to do it. Jimmy, Karen, Jackie, and Tom decided they would all spend the night at Jimmy's cabin, which was about 20 miles from Death Mountain. In the morning they would stop by for breakfast at Dave's Diner and discuss their history-making feat on Death Mountain. Everyone piled into Jimmy's van and set off down the road to Jimmy's cabin to let their egos explode about how they were going to be famous in a couple of weeks. The only fame these four mountain climbers would be getting is being splashed all over the major newspapers across the nation about their mysterious deaths. As Jimmy was pulling into the gravel driveway to his cabin, the snow was coming down pretty heavy. Karen said, "I can't wait until morning comes so we can be the first team of climbers to make it to the top of Death Mountain." Jackie chimed in and said, "This is going to be a dream come true since we've all been climbing mountains for over 10 years and Death Mountain is going to make us all famous." Tom replied, "I've never been so happy to be with the best climbers and friends, so this should be a breeze for us all." "Okay, everyone, we're here, and we all know the drill. No alcohol and no staying up late because we have our toughest days ahead of us. My watch says 7 p.m., and I want us all in bed by 9 p.m. and up by 6 o'clock a.m. for breakfast," explained Jimmy. "Well, we have 2 hours before we hit the sack. Does anyone want to play some poker?" asked Tom. Karen answered, "That sounds like a good idea to pass the time." Jackie replied, "I'm game." Jimmy chimed in and said, "I'll get the fire started, and you can count me in." Everyone sat down at the table, and the cards were passed out. As the game progressed, Karen asked Jimmy, "You think we can reach the top of Death Mountain alive to tell about it?" "If I had any doubt about our abilities, we wouldn't be here right now planning this great moment in history," replied Jimmy. Tom chimed in and said, "Look, guys, it's about time to call it tonight. I have to agree with Jimmy, we were all brought here for a reason, and that reason is to be the first team of climbers to reach the top of Death Mountain and come back as heroes. So, Karen, don't worry. You're in the company of some of the best mountain climbers, and I guarantee we're all coming back in one piece." "Sorry, everybody, I'm just a little nervous, because no one has ever been able to come back and celebrate such a feat," exclaimed Karen. "Okay, I think it's time to wrap up this poker game and get some sleep because our toughest days are ahead of us," exclaimed Jimmy. Everyone got up from the table and headed to bed, dreaming of their history-making days ahead of them. Morning finally arrived, and the alarm sounded. Jimmy grabbed the alarm clock off the nightstand and turned it off. Jimmy got out of his bed and walked over to wake up his climbing buddies and said, "Get up everybody, it's time for breakfast." They all got up, showered, got their supplies together for the climb up Death Mountain. After their showers, Jimmy went through his checklist to make sure they had all their gear packed. Then they put on their heavy coats and piled into Jimmy's van and headed to Dave's diner for breakfast. After breakfast, Jimmy told everyone to hold hands. Then Jimmy said a little prayer before they got up from the table and headed out of Dave's diner to Death Mountain. Finally, Jimmy pulled his van into Death Mountain, and its beauty overtook everyone, but we all know beauty is only skin deep. Jimmy said, "Okay, everybody, let's get this party started." Everyone got out of the van and unloaded their gear from the van and started their climb up Death Mountain. The snow was pretty intense, and as they were ascending the mountain, Jimmy turned around and said, "Since the snow is putting a damper on our ascending Death Mountain, I think we should set up camp in about a couple of hours. That way, we can at least get 5,000 feet behind us. Then in the morning, if the snow lets up, we can edge our way up the mountain before we set up camp again." Everyone agreed and proceeded forward with the climb. Karen chimed in and said, "I can see why they call this mountain Death Mountain." Then all of a sudden Karen screamed out, "Jackie, hold on!" Karen, Tom, and Jimmy rushed to Jackie's aid as she was clinging to dear life on the edge of the mountain. Tom and Jimmy grabbed hold of Jackie's arm, and Karen wrapped a rope underneath Jackie's arms as a precaution in case Tom or Jimmy lost their footing on the edge of the mountain. Luckily, with Jackie's friends' quick thinking saved her life. Jackie thanked her friends, and they all hugged and pressed forward. Finally, Jimmy and his friends reached their first destination to set up camp for the night. Jimmy and Tom got the tent set up, and Jackie and Karen gathered firewood to build a fire to give them warmth for the night. The first night was a breeze, but night 2 would keep these 4 climbers sleeping with one eye open. Strange noises were echoing in the distance, and their tent started shaking violently, causing panic inside the shelter of not knowing what lurks outside of their tent. Karen and Jackie were clinging to Jimmy and Tom, for dear life, screaming as the tent was shaking. Then silence. Tom and Jimmy told the girls to stay inside the tent while they would try to find out what caused the tent to shake, but as Tom and Jimmy searched for at least an hour, they couldn't find a single clue of what caused the tent to shake, not even as much as footprints in the snow. Tom and Jimmy went back to their tent shaking their heads at what just happened, with no explanation to ease the girls' minds. As Jimmy unzipped the tent, Jackie and Karen sat up waiting for the news, but there was no good news. Jimmy said, "I'm sorry, but Tom and I canvassed the whole area and could not find a single footprint or animal tracks leading up to the tent, so I'm just going to assume it was a gust of wind that caused the tent to shake." Karen replied, "That was no gust of wind, I tell you. We've all camped out in many tents throughout the years, and I know what wind can do to a tent, and someone or something shook our tent to scare us." Jackie chimed in and said, "Sorry, guys, that explanation doesn't hold water, but I thank you for trying to ease our minds. Maybe, whatever it was won't be back, and in the morning, we can press forward in our climb far enough away that this thing won't be back. I suggest we try to get some sleep because we have a long day ahead of us," said Jimmy. Everyone did their best to get a good night's rest, but that was going to be difficult, because of the fear of whatever was out there would probably be back, and this time their lives would be in jeopardy. All they heard through the night was strange noises echoing throughout the forest. When morning finally arrived, the 4 climbers sat around their campfire eating breakfast and discussing what might have been the cause of the tent shaking violently. Tom said, "Maybe it was a bear." Jackie chimed in and said, "I've heard legends about Bigfoot sightings on Death Mountain." Jimmy laughed and said, "Bigfoot? You've got to be kidding me. I was thinking more of alien intervention." "Karen, what do you think it was?" asked Tom. "I think it was some jealous climbers that don't want us to make history, that's what I think," answered Karen. "You know what, Karen, your answer makes more sense than any of ours," said Jimmy. Everyone started laughing and saying we're just making something out of nothing. After breakfast, everyone hiked to the second campsite another 5,000 feet up the mountain. The further these climbers got up the mountain, the closer they came to death. Again, another climber lost their footing and came inches from falling to their death, but luck was on their side. Their success would be running out as soon as they reached the third campsite, which would put the climbers at 15,000 feet. Finally, the climbers reached the third campsite as the snow was letting up. Jimmy said to the others, "We're about halfway to the top. But there is some heavy snow headed our way tonight, and that is going to set us back a couple of days." Karen chimed in and said, "That's okay by me. I could sure use the rest." Tom and Jackie both agreed. The 4 climbers got their tent set up and got a fire started for a night of terror. Everyone gathered around the fire to keep warm. Karen said, "Did you guys hear that?" "Hear what?" replied Jackie. "It sounded like a faint growl," said Karen. "Stop kidding around. You know how scared we got at the first campsite. We don't need any distractions," exclaimed Jackie. "Sorry, I was just having a little fun," replied Karen. Jimmy said, "This calls for a little celebration." Jimmy pulled a bottle of wine from inside his coat and popped the top, took a swig, and passed the bottle around until the bottle was dry. Tom said, "Do you guys realize how close we are to getting to the top of Death Mountain?" Everyone yelled out, "Hell yeah! We are going to be the envy of every mountain climber when we get down from this mountain next week," exclaimed Jimmy. "I think we all should get a good night's rest because we'll have a lot of celebrating and picture taking," said Jimmy. Everyone entered the tent for the last time. An hour passed, and everyone was fast asleep. Then all of a sudden blood-curdling screams echoed throughout Death Mountain from the 4 climbers and then silence. The following week the media was waiting patiently for hours for the anticipation of being the first to interview and take pictures of the history-making climbers, but that would not be the case. A search party came, and when the 4 climbers were found, the searchers got the shock of their lives. There was no sign of blood on or around their bodies. Their eyes were missing, and their bodies were charred, but there was no sign of a fire near the bodies. After further investigation by the local authorities and coroner's office, traces of radiation on their bodies and their skin was that of a person that was over 80 years old. Their hair was white. Something else that didn't add up was that whatever happened must have been horrifying because their tent had been cut open from the inside. There were assumptions made by many of the townspeople saying that they were part of an alien abduction that went wrong, and the aliens just tossed their lifeless bodies out of their spaceship like rag dolls when they were through with their experiment. Another assumption was that the climbers stumbled upon top-secret military research and the military had them killed. Who knows what happened to these 4 mountain climbers on Death Mountain? The 4 climbers were so close yet so far to making their record-breaking climb, but I guess we'll never know what happened to these climbers on Death Mountain. Please make sure to like, subscribe and comment for more.